A week into the Trump administration, Colorado is at the center of the immigration debate. A large-scale raid led by the DEA detains dozens of people. The governor insists that this is not a sanctuary state, despite state law blocking some cooperation with ICE. And Republicans in Congress want Denver's mayor to testify about sanctuary cities. Joining me this morning to discuss all the recent changes made by President Trump is our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor. Whitney, good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning, Colorado.
Well, in his executive order regarding immigration, President Trump declared an emergency at the southern border. What legal significance does that emergency declaration have on the ability to detain and deport immigrants?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's actually very creative in the sense of allowing the president to use a number of different agencies. It was not only the declaration of an emergency, but also using the word invasion, because that unlocks certain rights under a variety of statutes. And we heard that it was going to cost $26 billion for detention camps and all these other things. Well, what I think the president has done, and it's actually quite creative, and I think it may be effective, is to bring in these other agencies. So, for example, the Department of Homeland Security can do what's called an expedited removal, which if you've been in the country as a migrant for less than 2 years, you can be removed really without due process, without getting to an immigration judge. So that's one expedited removal under the Department of Homeland Security. They're allowing access to DOD funding on the border, which allows the military to come in and get involved. Now, that's going to be a real question, because the military can't really enforce they can't get involved in domestic law enforcement. So are they there to support DHS, or are they there to actually try and do these detentions? So they're also trying to invoke the Alien Registration Act of 1940, which requires all these migrants to actually register on a federal register and have a fingerprint. So by pulling in these various agencies and declaring it as a national emergency, the president has really expanded his power, which we're going to see a lot of legal challenges.
And this is where we're seeing a big focus on Colorado. Now, one of the executive orders actually allows the Attorney General and the Department of Homeland Security Secretary to take punitive action against sanctuary jurisdictions. Yes. Denver is one of those. Yes. What consequences are possible here?
Well, I mean, the most obvious would be the withholding of federal funding. So that's going to be a major one. It's also, though, they're trying to impose or expand what's called 287G of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which allows essentially various agencies to be deputized to go in and then enforce some of these immigration issues. So that could be the DEA, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the U.S. Marshals, the Bureau of Prisons. So if you have all of these folks, even though the specific cities are saying, hey, we're not going to support this, we're not going to turn people over, if you have all of these other agencies doing it, well, that really expands the power. But the concern is now nobody's safe. And this is really, there's a lot of scholars saying that this is going to lead to racial profiling because of the expansion of power and all these different agencies that can act.
Now, there have been a number of lawsuits, of course, challenging these various immigration-related executive orders. Where are those cases, and do they have any merit?
Yeah, I think they really do have some merit. And I know the ACLU, the District of Columbia, the New York Civil Liberties Union have all initiated lawsuits related to these. And really, they're challenging the expedited removal, because people have to understand, regardless of your status as a citizen, you still have protections under the Bill of Rights. And so that includes the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and that means right to due process. So before the government can take your life, liberty, or property, you're entitled to certain due process. And so the challenge here is that with the expedited removal, you don't get that due process, and that's a massive violation. So the problem here, though, for specifically the migrant community, is a lot of this is going to be sorted out after they've already been removed. In other words, you're not going to be here waiting for your appeal, waiting for something to happen. They're able to deport, and then these lawsuits are going to go through, and it'll be determined whether it's constitutional or not, but that may be, again, after folks have already been removed.
This is a topic that, of course, has a lot of layers when it comes to legalities involved. We appreciate you breaking that down, Whitney. Sure.